class at Dartmouth, and you also have Harvard's Black Arts Movement to Black Lives Matter class together in a series that we are calling Unrivalry, and we are in our Radical Dialogue series too as well. So I always begin every single class with a check-in. And so before class begins, we do a deeper check-in with individuals. But right now, I want us to collectively come to this space, honor the land that we are on, honor the space that we are in, honoring that we are present and we are just going to be. And so what we do is we unmute our mics and I say 5, 6, 7, 8, and we do a little bit of what we call a radical embodied check-in. So it's for everyone to have their voice heard in the space. It's gonna sound like blah, 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 but it's gonna be amazing. What we also do in this radical embodied check-in is that we do our favorite social dance move to our favorite affirmation. So I'll model the whole thing for you all. So I'll say, hey y'all, I'm Dr. Shamell Bell. I use sis as a pronoun and they. I'm feeling really overwhelmed by the moment, but incredibly grateful. My favorite social dance would be I am joy. I am joy. So you get the point. All right, so I'm gonna say 5, 6, 7, 8. My students know what to do. We're gonna unmute our mics and 5, 6, 7, 8.
I'm
Aaron.
I'm on Mackie Land.
Mackie Land right now.
This project that I'm working on.
I am love. I am love. Oh, okay. We're already back. Okay.
I am.
Oh my goodness. So what I want to do next is we're going to do a quick meditation. And typically we do guided meditations in the class. Sometimes our students take over. But today I think it's really important for us to breathe it in and let it go. And so we use the Insight Timer, and in particular, we use beautiful chorus. And so we're gonna have our media team play that for us. And if you could just close your eyes and follow the instructions in the song. Collectively take a deep breath in on 3. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in and release. Another breath on 3. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. For our last breath, let's be present, fill our entire body. And 1, 2, 3, breathe in. Release. No open our eyes and turn down the music. So that must have been what we needed, because I was going to play Breathe It In, Let It Out, Breathe It In, Let It Go. But the Hymn of Healing is a really important one that we use in our class for beautiful chorus. So that was exactly what we needed in the moment. And so there's one thing before I introduce you, Karan, that I want to do. We did it earlier in our Rituals of Breath class. And when we laugh, even if it's a fake laugh, our brain is tricked into feeling those hormones or whatever comes out. And so I want to count to 3, and I want us to release in the most glorious laugh that we can just do. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to go. Okay? You ready? All right. And it can be fake. It can be whatever it is. Your brain doesn't care. All right. So 1, 2, 3. All right, that's good. Perfect. Thank you all so much for doing that. I know we were feeling really heavy right now because of, the verdict that came down at the same time as a young girl was shot by the police, 16 years old. So I just want to just ground us in our breath and our being present, right? So I am going to introduce Karan Kendrick, hailed from her powerfully nuanced portrayal of Minnie McMillian in the blockbuster Just Mercy. Karan Kendrick is among the artistic elite. Additional credits range from The Hunger Games, Hidden Figures, and dramas like The Hate U Give, to TV's Grey's Anatomy and regional theaters Arena Stage. And recent roles include the 2019 comedy Family, CW's The Originals, and Greenleaf on OWN. In addition to her work as an actor, Karan has served tirelessly for the past decade to provide students with an opportunity to build character, discipline, and an eternal passion for the arts. In 2010, she co-founded the Kendrick Academy, a fully virtual school offering weekly online classes in acting and screenwriting to students nationwide. Building on her role in Hidden Figures, Karan invited select students across the country to participate in her 2017 Girls Empowerment Tour. You can read more about her, and I'll put it in the chat. Born and raised in Fort Valley, Georgia, Karan graduated from Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and earned her graduate degree at Wesleyan College in Macon, Georgia. An important quote that I love from her, she says, "I believe in the mantra of lifting as you climb. For me, it wasn't about making it and then giving back. Giving back is a part of who I am, and that was the way I chose to share what I was learning and experiencing to students who had similar interests. I wanted them to see very tangibly what a working artist looked like so that they would know that it is an attainable goal." So welcome, Karan, to the stage.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Bell. Always a joy and a pleasure to be in community with you. Thank you all for coming tonight, for being here. I am Karan Kendrick. I was born by the river. Just kidding. I was born in Fort Valley, Georgia, landlocked in one of the greatest places on the planet. I was born with beautiful green grass under my feet and loving hearts and souls and minds surrounding me and brilliant people everywhere I looked. And the sky, ooh, the sky is just as blue and beautiful as you can imagine. I was born into love. And even when we fuss and bicker, my sisters and I love each other. And that love has been passed down from generation to generation. And it's the love that I share in community. I am my mother's child. There's nowhere that I could go growing up where people didn't say, "Ain't you Eva Mae daughter?" If I had a nickel for every time I was recognized, because apparently I wear my mother's face. and I do so with gratitude. But according to her, I ain't never looked as good as she does. I am my father's child. We sometimes don't see eye to eye because we are looking in the same space. I am a child of the Most High God, and that comforts me because there are so many things happening in our space and in our time that are so disheartening. But to know to whom I belong, even in the midst, is a blessing that I don't take lightly. I bring fire. Sometimes it warms and soothes. Sometimes it lights the way. Sometimes it provides just enough of a flame for you to see, come on over here. Your tribe is gathered by the fire. Sometimes it's a flicker. Sometimes it's a flame. Sometimes it burns shit down. I just bring the fire. What you do with it, well, that's on you. I used to apologize, say sorry in many different ways. I used to tuck and ask permission for all of those things, for being a country Southern girl, for being the daughter of two first-generation college educated parents, for bringing fire that either lit the way or burned it down. I used to apologize, and I stand or sit before you today to say that I no longer do that. I'm not sorry. I am grateful. And I stand unapologetically in awe of who I am. I do what I can with what I have and who I have access to. I'm servant-minded, and I love that about me. So that's who I am. It's whose I am. It's what I bring, and I don't apologize for any of it. I start there because there's so many things happening. I don't have to tell you. You turn on the news, you see it. You turn off the news, you hear it, because it's a constant conversation that's happening around us. And we feel so many different ways about it, and rightfully so. We want to respond, but we may or may not know exactly where that response lies within each of us. But what I encourage us to explore tonight is the origin of that response. And the origin of that response is you. Being present, accepting yourself, how you feel, what you're feeling, where you are, honoring your truth in tumultuous times is revolutionary. So tonight we explore a form of revolution. Tonight we're going to do a little work, people. And that work begins with who you are. Who are you? This is a moment for you to reflect, and if Dr. Bell would like to open the floor and have you respond, I'm open to that. Or if not, you can reflect for yourselves. Get a pen and paper if you take notes on your phone, on your computer. Answer these questions. Who are you? What makes you feel? What makes you not feel? Go numb. What makes you laugh and say yes? What makes you run or say no? What makes you stand flat-footed, 10 toes down, unmoved? Who are you? What do you like? What do you dislike? What do you want? What do you need? Who are you? Just take a couple of moments to consider. who you are, outside of the labels that you may have been born into, outside of the responsibility that may have been dropped into your lap, outside of any external force. Who are you from the inside out? I'll give you a couple of minutes to sit with that. As you're exploring the truth of who you are, do you like it? When you're quiet and still and honest, what do you learn? How did you get to be? Who are you? Now, the next question I want us to explore is whose are you? And this one sometimes gets a little tricky because we enjoy oftentimes existing in a very independent space. I'm my own person. I am not owned by anyone. I don't belong to anyone or anything. But that is an unfortunate falsehood, I believe. When I think in terms of whose I am, I think about who has poured into me. It's less about ownership and more about community. I am Dr. Bell's friend. So when I state that truth, it reminds me to be vulnerable. It reminds me to feel. It reminds me to walk boldly into uncharted territory. It reminds me to speak my truth, even if my voice shakes. That's not about ownership. It's about community. When I think of my parents and how they've poured into me, and then I believe in God, I believe the Bible, I believe in Jesus. And what is that for you, or is it for you? And so for me, I believe the word that says he goes before me and makes the crooked places straight. So I don't have to be afraid. When I think in terms of whose I am, who am I in community with? Who am I in relationship with? And how is that edifying or fortifying? Now, the scary part is if you begin to consider whose you are, who you're in relationship with, who you're in community with, and it's not edifying and it's not comforting, there may be spaces to reevaluate, to make room in your community. So we talked about who we are. We explored that. We explored whose we are. Now, the next thing we want to explore is what do you bring? What can you count on yourself to show up with? If you think in terms of going to a party, do people know that they can count on you for napkins? And if it's a cookout, people want to discount the napkins. Well, what you going to do when you got barbecue sauce on your hand? You need the napkins, right? What do you bring? What do you bring? In community, do you bring joy, understanding? Do you bring questions? accountability. What do you bring? Take a few moments to consider. And then we'll end with a statement. But first, we have to discover what we are declaring. I end with the statement, I do not apologize for any of it. But first, I had to explore the ways in which I would apologize. Living under, living beneath, living in the less than of who you are is an apology. Keeping your mouth closed when you have something to say is an apology. Running away when you've been called to stand is an apology. How do you apologize? And maybe you don't. And if you don't let me project my experience onto you. But if you do, how do you apologize? What does that look like? Why do you apologize? And we end with a statement. There's something that we are sometimes taught, speaking specifically in terms of the message in the chat about living in the less than, or even in terms of apology. It's like you don't have the right to be brilliant. You don't have the right to speak your truth if it doesn't come in a certain way or sound like a certain thing or doesn't agree, with my truth. Or you don't have the right because you're too young. You don't know, you haven't even graduated yet. Just wait till. And that goes back to who you're in community with sometimes too. But standing boldly, not even arrogantly, but just really clearly in who you are, whose you are, and what you bring. And then not apologizing for any of it. Now, the second part of what I shared is directly connected to something that came out of my work with Just Mercy. I often say, that project really changed me. It forced me to look at the legal system in our country in a completely different light. And I had the honor of walking with a warrior, a giant in the field of reform and justice in our country, in Brian Stevenson, and observing his work, reading, learning about it, seeing him. I don't think I can ever make excuse for not having time to do anything ever again in my life. Watching him work and watching him be so intentional about the work because it was connected so squarely with purpose. And sometimes when you see someone operating in their purpose, you get inspired and you want to do what they're doing. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to work with Brian and it was like, no, that's not your calling, beloved. That's not what you do. So I had to ask, like, God, what do I do? You know, like, I want to contribute. I want to do something. And it kind of reminds me of this moment where we're in the midst of dueling pandemics. And on top of that, we're in the midst of a war in our country that's ongoing and is so sometimes difficult to detect because it's what it's all that we've pretty much known. And once we work through the emotion, or as we're dealing with the emotion, sometimes a part of that process is trying to discover what to do. How can I respond? Do I donate? Do I march? Do I give? Do I write? Do I fight? What does that look like? And the question that I had to ask and answer for myself then, and that I have to ask and answer for myself now, is what is your something? It looks different for everyone. What is your something? What can you do with what you have from where you stand and with who you have access to? And it's so personal and it looks different for everyone, but it's significant for everyone. You have access to people that I will never know. I have access to people that you will never speak to. So it's important, once we understand who we are, once we can stand very boldly in our own individual truths, that we challenge ourselves to do the work, to discover our somethings, and to be about the business of doing them. Yeah. Dr. Bell.
Wow, that was beautiful. You see, I didn't say a word. I'm back here like, yes. Wow. Say Johnny was back here snapping. That was beautiful. And it's so aligned with what we have been doing in class in our collective freedom dreaming, right? So our students I tell them, if they're doing anything for me in this class, then they have the wrong assignment. And I tell them to start with who they really are. And then that's why we start with meditation. That's why we do our liberation journaling, where we take them, and you even did that with us. So I didn't even get, to the point where we always have a moment where we take a moment, breathe, and then just write. And we answer these really difficult questions. And then what we do next is we think about our vision. And what we do with Collective Freedom Dreams is based off of the work of Robin D.G. Kelley. But what's really, really important about his work, I want to read a quote that we kind of use to do our liberation journaling about what our freedom dream is. It says, "Without new visions, we don't know what to build, only what to knock down. We not only end up confused, rudderless, and cynical, but we forget that making a revolution is not a series of clever maneuvers and tactics, but a process that can and must transform us." Yes. So we have been in a process of transformation together. That's what our assignments are. So they have essentially one project is to figure out, and this is iterative, right? So we're constantly going back to this collective freedom dreaming, so we start from one vision and it may shift. So the way that we do that in class is when we do a meditation practice, a visualization of, we're always thinking about what we want to dismantle or destroy. But there are people who need to be embodying and imagining those new visions about what happens when we really do abolish the police? What happens when we really do no longer have the prison industrial complex? What do those things look like? And who are the people with the vision? And so what we do is I take them through an exercise where they find their shift instead of what they want to destroy. Like, where are you shifting to? Because we have had an elder from the Black Panther Party from the movie The Spook Who Sat by the Door, David Lemieux. He comes in every quarter to have like an intergenerational dialogue. We actually just had him 2 days ago. And so with the conversation, he actually had me pivot because thought that we were going to reach like a revolution, especially when, you know, the pandemic happened. And I'm like, oh, so now we can do a real boycott. Y'all, we got to be inside. And now we can do a real genuine strike. And when people started sending their kids back to school, when, you know, it just didn't, it was a lot of performative activism instead of what I felt like this is our moment. I was like, oh, if a pandemic can't do it, if, you know, all of these things where we can really just say, you know, if the grocery people would be like, no, you ain't getting groceries. If the sanitation workers like, no, we ain't picking up your stuff. Like all of those people and all of us just be still and demand what we need to have all of our basic needs met. It was that moment that I realized that the revolution probably wasn't going to happen on the outside in my time. And the elder, you know, David, he's told me about the moment where he realized that he wasn't going to die for the revolution and that he had to find a new vision. And that's where we are in the class. So I just want to thank you for those exercises. And I did write down, you know, so many about like who I am and what makes me feel and not feel and laugh and, you know, whose I am. Community. That's what we do in this class. You know, we start with our own individual vision, and then we find those we resonate with, and then we have a collective vision and a collective project that means more to what we do for a grade. It has to impact their community, and it has to impact society as a whole in some kind of way. And it's so interesting that you mentioned like this collective and this community, because that's what we do as our final. We have a community gathering. And that's where their work is showcased, not to show that they've done cool work to get an A, but to show that the work that they've done in the classroom that has, you know, its birth from their individual vision that may shift as they shift. It's just incredible. Thank you for taking us through this. And what I would love for my students to do, what you, if you can, because your vision statements should be memorized by now, go ahead and drop them in the chat so that we can read through some of them. And we're just going to pick some of y'all to go ahead and discuss some of your collective freedom dreams. And then we're going to open it up to the YouTube audience who wants to come in for the last couple of minutes. And if you all have a collective freedom dream, we would love to hear it. So this is more like you just dropped such incredible knowledge. My mind is still like, and also we're going to have a question and answer session. I know that my students have at least 1 to 2 questions that they should have had prepared for you, because what I like to tell them, it's like, this is community organizing, right? Like we don't have the luxury to just be in an academic space and just take on our privilege and just study the theories. We have to be in our practices and we have to do it collectively. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to give folks a couple of seconds to put some things in the chat. You should already have it prepared. Drop them in the chat. And that's another way I'm going to take attendance as well. I'm going to save the chat. You know, I don't really like to operate in punitive ways, but I know that something that's been really profound is the ability for perfectionism to have us be silent. And one of our last classes, I think last week we worked on self-sabotaging behaviors. And so I always say to my students, I'd be remiss if I have you, you know, figuring out who you really are and your vision and all of this, and not tell you that sometimes your roadblock is yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I've definitely experienced that. And I've seen patterns. I worked with a therapist who helped me to recognize patterns. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so now when it comes up, I'm like, like the Kimbe Matumbo, not in my house. I'm like, nope, because purpose is greater than destructive patterns, right?
Yes.
It's so much. I am really big on purpose and being connected to, you know, what you're really here to do.
Yes.
And one thing that I'm excited about with your students, and one reason I really love young people, first of all, I think they're just smarter than we are. Honestly, I just believe that, you know, whatever the question is, you guys have the answer. And so I speak a lot to empowering you to really articulate your voice and be bold enough to amplify it. And even if no one responds to it, trust that if you have that thing, if that thing is so clear to you, it's just a matter of time before it comes to fruition, before we experience it in a fully realized version. So continue to work on it. Don't ask for permission to have your voice. Don't ask for permission to walk in your truth. If the world is not ready for it yet, it just means that you need to continue to hone it, continue to strengthen it, continue to prepare it so that when the world is ready, you're ready, right? There have been times when in my work, it's like God has just dropped something into my spirit in terms of how to prepare. I had a meeting last week, and I'm not in a space where I can like give details yet, but I'm so excited because I'm in the middle of, I feel like, a manifestation. It's stuff that has been laid on my heart for literal years. And I was like, okay, it's time. And I would go and share it in a space and it wasn't received. And it's like, okay, it's not time. I take it back in, I work on it, and I go and I'm like, okay, this is it. This is it. And then someone doesn't get it, right? They don't understand it. They don't champion it. And I'm like, oh, and it's like, don't worry about it. It's just not time. They gave you information. What did you learn from what they didn't understand? Take it back, work on it. So then the time is now.
Yes.
And they get it and they champion it and they understand it and they explore it and they build upon it and they've been waiting for it. So if you don't get anything else, I believe that the answer is inside of you guys. I really do. And that excites me.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's why I set up the classroom where I don't ever I don't want them to think that there is a hierarchy with me as the professor.
Yep.
And I'm always saying I'm ready to learn. Like even with you, I was like, I can't wait to learn. I know this is my classroom and, all of these types of things, but no, it's not my classroom. If we're talking about the classroom, I'm always telling our TAs, don't say Dr. Bell's classroom or, no, say our classroom. And so I think something that's really powerful that you have said that is hitting me while I'm looking at folks dropping in their visions is this idea that sometimes we shrink or play small, that less than that you were talking about because of the fear of the backlash when people can't see you in your full power.
Yeah.
And so for me, I am operating most of the time in my less than. And it's sometimes and I will tell you, the word is, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to allow myself to be at my full capacity if people are already mad at me now.
Girl, I want to send you a shirt that just says "Stay mad." I feel like I love your shirt tonight. Nah, bigger, because it's always bigger. It's always bigger. It's always more. But I just feel like you need a shirt that says "Stay mad," because that's not yours to carry.
Yes. Okay.
And for all of you, and that's what I was talking about when when someone doesn't get you, when they don't get it, when they don't embrace where you are.
Right. The timing is so important.
Yeah. I'm so excited to jump into these visions.
Go ahead.
Let's look. To use my privilege to center the dreams of those most impacted by environmental racism and colonialism to support their reclamation of land and body. Thank you, Maggie. Oh, centering is a whole word. Centering is a whole word. And there's something about centering that I see in this over the past year. I've seen a lot of attempts at centering, right? People want to do it, but something that I think we have to pay really close attention to in centering is to not dictate in the centering, right? Like, in Hollywood sometimes,
Oh yeah.
when people want to tell a story that is not their own, they still control the story,
Ah,
right? And centering, which is, Maggie, you are blowing me away just with this one word, because centering is, I want you to tell your story.
yeah.
I will use my privilege to position you to tell a story. And what happens in that moment is, now we see angles of the story that we could never see. Like, I can't tell Dr. Bell's story, right? There are moments in her story that only she can show me. There are
Mm,
pieces of her that only she knows.
right.
But if I try to control that, I'll never see it. So yeah, that's huge. Thank you, Maggie. Um, to learn, listen, and liberate myself and all others as I channel the wisdom technologies of nature into fate's technologies of tomorrow.
Mm.
Yeah, that's okay. Help me, Milan. Can you share? Can you elaborate? Tell me more about what you mean. What that means.
Absolutely. Hi, one, it's been wonderful to hear your wisdom today. So what I mean by, for me, wisdom technologies are inspired by another speaker we had, but really focusing in on like your breath, your physical movement, taking care of the things that like God or some other higher power has given you to take care of yourself, and using those technologies as I framed them to become what fate will project into tomorrow. So kind of combining the physical and bringing that into whatever form that looks like in the future.
Okay.
I love that.
Thank you, Milan. Okay, my vision, this is Remy. My vision is to draw upon sacred earth energies to co-hold space. Yes, co-hold for liberation of all young people grounded in hip hop culture. Wait a minute. Okay, and Black liberation, and to support culturally sustaining street dance educators in all contexts. I know you love that, Dr. Bell. I know you do. Yes, co-hold space. Can you speak more on co-holding space, Remy?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. I think I had originally written it as hold space, but there's a recognition there that sometimes the space is not mine to hold,
Mm,
and that it's about all of us collectively holding space together, and that's not something that I can or would want to do just by myself for others, but that everybody has a role to play in that.
hmm I love that. I love that. Thank you, Remy. Co-hold. Yes. Okay. I'm like, I want to get that into my spirit because, yes, y'all are teaching me now. Co-hold. Okay. Catherine says, my vision is to be more than the place I was born. Oof. To utilize my privilege to create institutional change in education so that everyone may have access to the opportunities I've had. Mm. Where institutional change is slow, I will work to personally create spaces and opportunities for others. I will do this by listening to those who know better, acting based on what they say they need, and not allowing others to speak over them. Catherine,
Hi.
hi. There you are. Okay, so you said, where institutional change is slow, I will work to personally create spaces and opportunities for others. What does that look like? That's exciting.
Um, so some context for this is I've actually for a long time I've wanted to be a professor in astronomy and astrophysics. And I'm sure, as we all know at this point, changing higher education or abolishing it or whatever we need to do to fix this is not going to happen quickly. And so I've seen in my time at Dartmouth, different professors go out of their way to create spaces intentionally to help include like historically underrepresented students, FGLI students, things like that.
Mhm.
Because from a selfish perspective, my field loses all kinds of brilliant people to imposter syndrome all the time because, either individual professors or universities as a whole aren't able or willing to support those students in the same way. So, for example, at Dartmouth, it looks like the there's a tutoring program through Thayer that kind of focuses on first year students taking their like engineering prerequisite classes. That's intro physics, calculus, and computer science. And those are the classes most often where you see kids dropping majors. And so creating a space that is not just, oh, come in, we'll help you with your homework, but come in, let's chat. You know, being a student is hard. Let me, you know, an older student, someone who's been through this before, kind of walk you through it, and just kind of doing what you can to remind people that they deserve to take up space in the institution they're in. Sorry, that was kind of long.
No, don't apologize, Catherine.
Oh, you're right.
See? It creeps out sometimes. It slips up.
It does.
But no, that's great information. And I think it's a wonderful perspective to have. And what I kept hearing when you were talking was, when you were talking about the instructor, you've watched instructors do this on a certain level, it plants the seed, right? Mm-hmm. And you're in a space where that seed is being watered and it's growing. And so I'm excited to see, like, when you are in position to do that, which is why you don't have to dismantle, you have to prepare, right? You don't always have to tear down. You can also prepare so that when you're in that position, you're ready to impact on a much larger scale. So that seed, the impact that you see now, you're going to have it exponentially when you get into position. And that's exciting for me. So
thank you.
That's beautiful. Karen, Sejani would like to speak his vision.
Please. Yes.
You ready? Say your name. How old are you?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Sejani. I am 10, and this is my vision. My vision is for everyone's basic needs to be met, all the resources like food, water, shelter, and every resource, and for everyone to just live happy and live a good life.
Basic needs met, all right. Resource?
Yes, resources. Yes, resources. Sejani, I'm excited to see how you're going to be an agent of change to move us to that truth. I know the good stuff that's being poured into you. I know already. So I'm excited to see what that's going to look like in another 10 years. It's going to be world change.
And another part of my vision is I want, instead of the police, something called the helpers, a group that helps people in need. Like when someone's robbing a bank, for instance, they give them resources that they need instead of stealing from other people.
So being proactive instead of reactive. Okay, Sejani. Okay, visionary. I see you.
He's been talking about the helpers since he was 5 years old, y'all. We got to get this baby to helpers.
Yes. What's going to be so interesting is to pull this chat up in 20 years when Sejani is the CEO of, or the founder of, you know what I mean? Because that's how it happens. These things are not just arbitrary. There are other children right now who are having the same idea, like, this is what we should be doing. And so when you all meet up, this thing is going to be so beautiful. I'm excited. I am excited to see it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All righty. Shall we continue, Dr. Bell?
Yes. Okay. Did you see any other visions you want to point out and get some clarity on? They're amazing in the chat.
They are. I'm like, I want to see every single one. Access to education and healthcare. Yes. Generational wealth. Yes. And happiness. How about that? Happiness. Empower and uplift my people, promoting a society in which we're not bound, limited, or judged by the color of our skin, one in which our Blackness can be seen and embraced. Yeah. So interesting how something so seemingly simple is still so aspirational.
Beautiful. Did anyone, I'm reading the chat. Oh, Nathan said, Sejani, that made me cry. And then, oh, thank you. Okay. Is there anyone that wants to elaborate on their vision?
Because these are all great.
Great. And so, because we have an audience that can't see the chat too. So,
okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear some folks read theirs and share. Or we can put some, I don't want to put y'all on blast, but if your video is on, then you are fair game. Gab. You already knew it.
Without you looking at me, I could feel it.
No.
Do you want me to share my vision?
Yes, please.
I want to create new social norms that uplift Black people and create equitable changes in economic systems, education, and the environment. I want to use spaces of love and healing to educate non-Black people while displacing the burden of education from the Black individual. And that just kind of comes from just like seeing a lot of activism last summer. It was just like, I feel like this is like, I'm like, okay, let's go. Like, it's time to mobilize. Let's go. And everyone's like, yeah. And now it's like less than a year later, I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's mobilize. Everyone's like, huh? And it's just like, I feel like I, or like the other POC that are in the spaces that I'm in, are the ones having to push for this. And it's just like, it just hurts because it's just like, y'all, I need you to not just say that you care. I need you to actively care and take those steps with me, you know, so.
I love that. I love that. Wow, that's beautiful. Jonathan, I wanted to ask you if you minded to share the shift that we discussed as well as your vision.
Yeah, absolutely. So this like ties exactly into what you were talking about with apologizing. And last week I kind of had a big, like a breakdown actually, after Dr. Bell was talking about self-sabotage. And for me, it was a big moment because, for example, I never speak in class. I've lost like points for it. My grades have been worse for it. I can't ever write because I don't feel like my voice is valuable. And talking about self-sabotage for me was really big because that made me realize that everything was me, like all my problems were me. And the shift for me was thinking about not trying to destroy myself, but trying to like think about what I want to build. And absolutely last week with the vision statements, actually I haven't even said my vision statement, but my vision is to shift towards a world built around human need, love, and our responsibilities to ourselves, each other's, and the earth. And my skills are healing and caring for others. And for me, the big realization here was I think the key word here for me was healing, because I've done enough self-sabotage, and I feel like now is the time for me to heal myself and help others to heal. And yeah, and the world I'm shifting towards is one not focused on profit and competition, but one around need and love. So that's my big shift. Yeah.
I am so proud. Go ahead, Karan.
I was just going to say, that's huge, Jonathan. And I totally understand and can relate to being in spaces where you feel like you can't speak up. And that's part of that apology, and it's censoring yourself before someone else has an opportunity to tell you that it's not good enough. Or before, you say something that it's like, oh, was that right? Or did I say it in the right way? But Jonathan, baby, on your worst day, you are amazing. On your worst day, you are the greatness.
Wait, tell her my quote that I tell y'all in class. Who can remember the quote? Somebody just say it.
It was move through the world like you are a mediocre white man.
Oh, wow.
They don't have imposter syndrome. Look, I've tried to tell my students all the time that even their mediocrity is brilliance. So move through the world as if you're not mediocre.
Without apology. Move through without apology. Yeah. And something that that I can definitely identify with is being in spaces like I did the press tour for Just Mercy. And it was my first time on such a large stage. seated next to just like greatness and then greatness and then greatness and then greatness and then greatness. I remember being on stage one night and it was like Brie Larson and then Michael B. Jordan and then Jamie Foxx. And I just kind of looked. I was like, what is happening? What is going on? But
that sounds like a dream. Never mind. Keep going.
Right. And then, that particular night, Brian wasn't there, but then there were nights, there's Brian Stevenson. And I think that is what pushed me to, okay, these people are great, but you're on stage next to these people for a reason. Who are you? Whose are you? You're sitting here next to these great people, but also God has gone before you and made the crooked places straight. Also, your mother and father, your family, your sisters, your cousins, all of that. You're not here alone. You're not here by yourself. Your community is standing right here with you. What do you bring? Like, it's not just like this kind of heady, artsy fartsy thing. It's something that I really encourage you to explore, to find your voice and to stand in your truth, so that regardless of who's in the room, you're so clear, and your clarity will then impact everyone around you. So Jonathan, yes, open your mouth and speak, even if your voice shakes, because you have something inside of you that we need. We need it. And if you don't share it, we'll never have it.
You and I feel like you're in my class. Like, are you in class? Like, have you been listening to our conversation? Because I don't know, I don't see Natan and some other friends in our class. We've been talking about the importance of, if you do not speak your truth, if you don't speak who you really are, that is a key to unlock someone else's journey.
Yes.
So if you're quiet, then you messing up the rotation. And so yeah, we've been having conversations about, this is more like conversations with myself. So something else you said, and this is like anybody and all of my friends can tell you, I'm always asking them to chart their own patterns and chart the patterns of people around them. Mm-hmm. And one of my patterns that I see is that, there's something that I could do, but I do the bare minimum of it. So I do it so people don't really notice that I'm not fully doing it. For example, my dissertation, I did a written as well as a documentary. And so I did like a full feature-length documentary, but I hid them both. And so I did them, but I hid them for other people being able to see it, because one, the larger story that I was telling people is that it's sacred work for my community. And I wasn't really wanting to release it to academia. I didn't really know how I felt about like what happens when it's published in the academic journal. Like, I was like, this is for my community. But then another part of me thought about it, and it was just like, I had an opportunity where, say, Johnny and I went viral for doing the Crip Walk at my PhD graduation. And at that same time as when my PhD, like the beginning section of the documentary is me teaching the Crip Walk to some community members. So it would have been a perfect time to just drop that link. Do you think I dropped the link? And it was two things. One was like, I don't want, because I have a dedication in the beginning of it to Nipsey Hussle. And I didn't want to seem like I was trying to do it off a cloud and trying to go viral. But another part of me, when I really look at my patterns, is that I was afraid of my full potential. I was afraid of my full power. So I went to South Africa a little bit after that, not even a little bit, it was 6 months after I went viral for my graduation. And someone was like, Shamell Bell, because they said in the video, introducing Dr. Shamell Bell. It was like really like pronounced. Mm-hmm. And someone in South Africa came up to me and was like, I saw you and your son crib walking. And I was like, so even though I was trying to play small and I didn't want to like put my dissertation documentary out there, and all those things, it still had its reach, but I'm always charting that that's a pattern that I do. I don't step into certain moments. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know.
It's no. It's totally I think it's because I do this, I see with social media. It's like, okay, I have this thing I want to say, oh, but my hair isn't quite right. So I'll just record it later and then I'll put it up when the lighting and the hair. So a mantra that I'll share with you, that I have to tell myself: no ego, no fear. What if you move through space with no ego and no fear? What does your world look like then? Because sometimes we can come up with all the reasons why, but it's really ego. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want people to think X, Y, and Z. We don't want blah, 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 blah. But if we're operating out of purpose, all that stuff goes away. It can't stand in the light of purpose.
That's
So,
beautiful.
yeah, it's all, yeah.
We're going to transition into more of a question and answer. This is the
Sure.
second. Unless you have some more visions. Sophia, did you say your vision?
No, I did not say my vision.
Question too.
You said I had a question?
And if you have a question prepared as well, because we're going to transition. So I was going to have you be the segue with your vision and your transition to a question if you had one.
I do not have a question at the moment. But my vision is to chip away at identity-based hierarchies by cultivating communities of care in which everyone is cherished and the collective is prioritized. I do this by using a love ethic to create fellowship with Black, poor, incarcerated, and otherwise marginalized people.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so easy for us to other people, I call it, marginalized, or people whose experiences we don't know or recognize or understand. And to just be like, well, why don't they just? But that's one reason that community is so important. So you can begin to understand someone as human first and connect with them in terms of humanity, and then build a rapport, build a language, build an understanding, build community from there. So I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing, Sophia. There you
In
are.
our chat, we usually stack our names when folks want to talk. So that's what stack means. So I asked folks to please stack if they had something to say. They all should have several questions for you because they were supposed to write some. Before we transition more into questions, I was just wondering if they're just what you were hearing with their visions. Explicitly, I think you said it throughout your entire just offering, but what is your freedom dream, Karan, before we move into questions? What is your freedom? Do you want to hear mine?
Yes, please.
Okay. So my students know I'm going to do the transition because I'm a work in progress still. So when I first started my vision, it was, and I had a lot of head movements to it. I was like, my vision is to viciously attack the detrimental policies. Oh, you want to say my vision for me? I said it that many times. He knows my vision. You know my vision? Go ahead. What's my vision? My vision is to viciously attack the detrimental practices and
policies that disadvantage the poor and Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Right. So I started where I wanted to just viciously attack the practices and policies that disadvantage the poor and people of color. Then I kind of moved to this idea, like, I don't want to viciously attack nothing. I'm tired. And so that's where I started to use the language of shifting, because there are people who work on that work of creating foundation and, tearing things down, different things like that. But I wanted to be able to think about what I wanted to build. And I was tired of learning lessons through pain and suffering. And I wanted to learn lessons through ease and flow. And so my vision shifted to, my vision is to, through ease and flow, to shift those detrimental practices and policies that disadvantage the poor, people of color, Black, Indigenous, queer folk in housing, education, employment, and the environment. And I do this through the arts, education, and community organizing. And so it seems big, but what I like to share with my students is I do something for my vision every day of my life. Am I not, doing something for the detrimental practices and policies in education by having this classroom set up the way that it's set up? Am I not shifting the education just by, homeschooling my son? So a lot of times people think in order to be an activist, which I don't even like that term, we don't have the privilege to be activists anymore. Everyone needs to do their shift. Everyone has their vision that is the key to someone else's, right? So for me, every single day, I'm like, am I doing something for the environment? Okay, I got an electric car. Am I doing something for all of these different things that I wish that would be dismantled? So that's how my vision is. And I say the medium by which I do it through, and that's through education, what we're doing right now. And this is also community organizing for me, building community in spaces that you wouldn't otherwise think that things like this is happening, and actually connecting it to people outside and on the ground and grassroots, and that interconnectedness. And then finally, I do it through I said the arts, education, and the arts, using the arts as an avenue to, what you smelling at? Oh, the air came on. Okay, so yeah, that's my vision. So Karan, I would love to know what your freedom dream is.
So freedom for me is walking boldly without fear of the future. So my freedom dream, my vision, is to be able to, or to continue to, or to even enjoy walking boldly in the truth of who I am without fear of the future. I don't have to worry about how it's going to work out, because when I am walking boldly in the truth of who I am, I just know that it's going to work out. So I can commit to the path, to the journey, because I know that I'm walking into the most beautiful, fully realized manifestation of purpose, of what has been placed inside of me. When I am at my best, my most giving, my most generous, my most productive, my most fully realized, that is what I am doing. Sometimes things come and I shrink back and I am afraid to walk in that bold truth. So my biggest vision would be to not be afraid, to walk in that truth, to enjoy the journey. Sometimes it's like, is this working? Is this right? Wait a minute, did I miss something? Am I missing out? Am I right? But to trust and to walk in that truth. And that covers then all the things, because I can't possibly think of like what I was working towards at 20. There's a different need now, but the process of the journey is the same. So if I can commit to the process, if I can commit to honoring the journey, the needs will be taken care of. The things, the assignments, those things will be taken care of.
That's so beautiful. All right, so I don't see anyone stacked in the chat, but I know folks all have questions for you. They just may be a little bit nervous. So if you want to drop the questions into the chat, Aaron just put his name in the chat. So let's hear.
First, I just wanted to thank you, Karan, for being here, sharing your presence and your wisdom with us. Is much appreciated. And so right now, what we were talking about freedom dreaming, and I'm trying my best to separate myself from the hateful, hyper-competitive mindset of racial capitalism. And so recently, one way I've personally been trying to do this is just by smiling more at and with people, right? Trying to return to the goofy gap tooth grin of my 10-year-old self. So I was just wondering for you, if you could tell us a little bit about how you ground yourself in this society and how you create love and look for the love when it's seemingly so elusive.
Excuse me. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. And that's a wonderful question. And I think one of the ways is how I open the exercise, knowing who I am and really embracing her. And it's not all like, and you're wise and you're kind and you're loving, sometimes it's like, and people get on your nerves and you get triggered and you want to cuss people out. Like sometimes it's those things too, right? But embracing the sinner and the saint, like embracing all of who I am. I know I keep saying it, but I really think it starts with you because one thing that I challenge myself to do when I go on set is like, you have two choices. You can be a thermostat or a thermometer, right? Are you going to react to the environment or are you going to establish it?
Wait, can you say that again? Run that back real quick.
Yeah, you can choose. I give myself two options when I go on a set. You can be a thermostat or a thermometer. Are you going to react to the environment or are you going to establish it? And so when I'm in a good space, when I'm grounded, when I accept me, flaws and all, then I can walk into a space without apology. I can bring what I bring and I can establish that. I can give you a good morning. If I can embrace all of me, then I can embrace all of you.
Mm-hmm.
If I accept myself without judgment, then I can accept you without judgment.
Woo.
And even if you go off on me, and even if you're having a bad day, and even if it doesn't penetrate me, I see it for what it is. You're having a bad day and you're allowed bad days. And that's okay.
You need to be in my classroom.
If we're spending any amount of time together, I try to take this perspective. Okay, this is either who this person is or it's where this person is.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Is it who you are or is it just where you are right now?
Mm.
Right? Wow. But love is a choice. Joy is a choice.
Yep.
So I just try to choose wisely.
So
and not let people make that choice for me. Dr. Bell?
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I get so excited. So anytime you pause, I'm like, yes. So but say Johnny and I are tripping over here because he also had, I homeschool him. He's been homeschooled since kindergarten, and he had one assignment about. You want to tell about the assignment?
So my mom gave me this assignment, and to research joy. I'm interviewing a lot of my mom's friends, and after all the interviews, I've come to the conclusion that I found my definition of joy.
Okay, what is it?
Okay, my definition of joy is a higher level of happiness, but you choose it. It's intentional.
Okay, give me an example of what you mean by it's intentional.
Yes.
What's a good example? Okay, this is a ship, but let's say someone dies. You gotta remember the time you spent with them instead of right there when they die. You gotta think of all the times you had with them.
That's an intentional act of joy of celebrating them. I see what you mean. Yes. Wow. I didn't mean to laugh at him. I threw him off because he was like, my conclusion is.
I know. I was like, so.
I wasn't ready.
I'm done for the night. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, say Johnny.
You got conclusions, y'all. I didn't know where I was going because he was in here in my ear as well, and we both cutting you off. But you just are so like synergetic with us in this classroom as well, because what I tell my students, but also in organizing spaces, that we need to be aware of the trauma that we bring into a room. Like you know what, it's really selfish of me, but we meditate in the beginning is because I'm a clear empath. and I'm clairsentient, and I'm like all of the things in my body. And so I need to actually breathe so that I can calm y'all down, so I can feel all of y'all.
She can feel all you guys' energy.
I really do. And so that was one of the main things, like, let's just breathe. And then when do we have a space to actually just be intentional about our breath, right? And so what I often tell my student is that you got to be healed in your own trauma so that you can meet someone and not meet them in your trauma, and not meet them in the projection.
So you don't affect anyone else with your trauma.
Yeah, and also so that when you have a certain instance where you can actually be I'm trying to figure out the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer, because it's brilliant. I want you to explain that a little bit for me. But sometimes you just like, someone says something to you and you really don't have to be triggered, but because they triggered your trauma or a projection that has nothing to do with you, really. So I'm always asking my students, is this yours? And so you just came in here and just blew us away. I want to ask you one more time about the thermostat and the thermometer, and then Nyla had a question.
Sure. The thermometer takes the temperature. It takes the temperature and it shares what that temperature is. The thermostat establishes the temperature. It says it's not going to go over this. It's not going to go under this. This is what it's going to be. And so when you walk into a space, do you take the temperature? Do you take it in? Do you, respond based on what someone else has established? Or do you come in and say, we're not going over this. We're not going under that. Right? So you can, if the temperature is not okay, you can change it.
I love that. That's brilliant. I'm going to be quoting you and quoting you and quoting you.
I stole it from somebody, so quote away.
That's the key I'm talking about. That person gave it to you and you became the key. And that's so just pivotal in what we're doing as community organizers. Nyla.
Hi, Karen. It's a pleasure to have you here and to be in your space and with community with you. One question that I had is, what inspired you to found your academy, and what is something that you hope the generation of students that you've taught or mentored have taken away from you and have learned and will implement?
That's a great question. So I grew up in a football town. Everything was connected to football, but I'm an artist, right? Devontae too. He's like, yep, me too. Is that what you're saying? So yeah, if you wanted to dance, you could dance at the halftime show for the football game. If you wanted to sing, you could sing the national anthem at the beginning of the football game, right? So you get it. Everything was about football. But I was like, wow, what if we created a space where students could spend hours studying music or theater or dance, just like they spend hours on the football field? Because that's what I wanted. And when I went to college, I was like, wait, we can go to class and then go to rehearsal. I could spend all this time just exploring what I'm passionate about. So when I graduated, I wanted to offer that same opportunity to the kids in my community because I didn't have it. So that's kind of how it started. And then every student that we have doesn't necessarily want to work in the arts as a profession, but I hope that they will all take away the ability to articulate their voice, whatever that is, and to not be afraid to share it in whatever space they find themselves. The ability to be creative problem solvers, the ability to be creative. Because if we look at the pandemic, if we look at all this time over the past year, the art is really what has helped us to sustain and survive. It's our safe space, right? And the ability to create. That's what I was doing this morning. I had a meeting. My first meeting this morning was at 10, but I was in the middle of writing a poem about the young lady who at 17 had the wherewithal to record George Floyd's last moments on earth. And in light of everything that's happened in the past 24 hours that we know about, there's still more that we don't even know exists. But in light of everything that we know about, that was how I could process the moment, process where I was, and then begin to function for the rest of my day. And so I hope that art will become a part of their life in a way that serves them and helps them to serve others. Thank you, Nyla.
That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you. I know we had someone else, and who was that? Maggie. Maggie, what's yours?
Yeah, I had a question. Hey, I could imagine that acting in a movie like Just Mercy could be traumatizing or re-traumatizing or triggering. And please correct me if that's not wrong to, or that's like not true to your experience. But I'm wondering sort of what factors you consider when choosing to act in a movie or to engage in such a project, and how you sort of guard your energy and protect yourself in those spaces, and sort of, yeah, like what considerations you take when engaging in a project like that.
Yeah, so actually I shared this at TIFF, at the Toronto International Film Festival, how a cousin of mine who has since been released, he's out now and functioning and doing well and thriving, and I am so grateful for that. But when we were filming, he had been in prison for 24 years at that time. And while we never ostracized him, I don't think I really fully understood, and I probably will never fully understand, but I think that the process of doing the movie, of preparing for it and actually filming it and delving into that world guided me into an understanding that was deeper than I had before. And there were conversations that we had because I had the experience of delving into that world and spending more time understanding that we had not had prior to. And additionally, you see a lot of stuff like red carpet and interviews and that kind of thing. But what you don't see is the time that we spent out of sight, behind the scenes, going into prisons and speaking life to those who were either currently or who were formerly incarcerated, who were working side by side with us, to speak life, to empower, to encourage, to listen, to just shut up and listen and understand. And so those are some experiences around the film. And then when choosing a role, I think it has changed over the course of my career. Quite often I would choose a role because I like to eat. I like to pay my bills. I like to, buy things that I like sometimes. And so that is certainly a factor, not the main factor. If you look at my body of work, you know that it's not just for money. But it also, I think, I've been fortunate to have this prayer answered. And I do this a lot because I'm like, I have a friend who works all the time, right? And I really admire her because she can have an amazing project thrown into her lap and she'll be like, I don't feel led to do this. I don't think this is the one for me. Pilot season, usually the conversation with actors is like, oh God, please, please, please let me book a pilot. And with her, it's like, God, which pilot am I to take? And she gets multiple offers, which is like incredible, right? But God knows his children and he knows that I am not that child. If somebody is like, hey, do you want? I'm like, yep, I'll take it. Me? Yes. Because I love working. I love acting. And so I don't think I'm as thoughtful as she is. And so there are a lot of things that honestly just don't come my way. A lot of things that I don't go out and try to audition for every job. And there are a lot of things that just do not come my way. But the ones that do, like with Just Mercy, like with The Hate You Give, I was like, oh, this is mine. It wasn't so much about,
love that.
It wasn't so much about like, ooh, I get to work with Jamie Foxx, or ooh, which is incredible, right? It's amazing. But it was like, ooh, I know that I can honor this woman's life in a way that I don't know that anybody else can.
I agree.
I believe in what I am going to bring
Mhm.
in the telling of her story that's going to just honor her. And I want her to feel seen, and I want her to feel loved, and I want her to be understood in a way that people hadn't considered. So that's a long answer, Maggie. I hope there was something in there that kind of made sense.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Right? It was
Thank
so
you.
beautiful. Even the character that you played in The Hate You Give, when people would look or frown at her, you gave her so much depth
Thank you.
and humanized and just, I mean, we were rooting for her.
I love Aisha.
I love Aisha.
And it's what we do in life. We look at people and we make these assumptions about them and we other them.
Yep.
Right? Without knowing their story, without knowing that if we were in their shoes, but you may make the same choices. We don't know. So, yeah.
Brilliant. So I know that we have only a couple more minutes. There's some folks that came in, and I don't know if they had a question. Just go ahead and drop your name in the chat. And if not, I do just have a couple of things to kind of wrap us up. First, I want to do a thank you bomb, but I'm going to wait like a minute to see if anyone that came in from the YouTube, we let them come in at the last minute to ask you any questions. But I also want to honor this intergenerational dialogue that's happening right here. You know, and I want to thank you for allowing my son. And I'm looking in the chat, and the students are calling him a prophet, asking him to be a PA, and he's articulate. And my mind is blown because, you know, thinking about what you said earlier, and you spoke life over my son and said in 20 years, you'll see what he's doing, and we can look back at this. And so this is organizing 101. To have the intergenerational dialogue. We've had, you know, just a conversation with, like I told you, a Black Panther that had been a Black Panther at 16 and almost 70 years old and in the classroom. So I just want to thank everyone for just really leaning into the work. This is the work. And so I don't see anybody in the chat, but I'm not sure. Christina, did you have a final question? Our lovely Harvard TA?
Sorry, yes. I guess as a final question, I want to take it back to the beginnings and your beginnings. How did you first know that you wanted to be an artist, and what was it like answering that call, like the first time and then throughout your life?
I come from a family of storytellers. So storytelling has always been a part of my existence. It wasn't necessarily on the stage, it was just the way we communicated. There are stories like intergenerational stories that you can call any one of my first cousins, and we're all going to tell you the same story, probably in the same way, because our parents, that's what they do. So I've always seen it just as a part of life, honestly. And I think it definitely is a calling, as I have tried to run from it. I've tried to not act, Lord, I've had so many jobs, like Jesus, please. But I am grateful to be able to do it. And once I kind of reconciled it to purpose. Versus like, I get to, you know, be in front of people and do a thing, you know. But once I reconciled it to purpose and also gave myself permission to enjoy it because it's fun. I love it. Nobody signs up to act out of punishment, right? That's not how it's created. And so once I did that, that was definitely a part of my journey. And it's just, yeah, I'm grateful for it. But it's always been a part. In some way, it's always been a part of me. I'll say this really quickly. Because it's a sports town, I played sports growing up. I played basketball. I played a bunch of sports, but I remember a moment where I was in high school and I looked up and I was like, this is the biggest stage. This is the biggest stage I can be on. And if you made a point or 2 points, you would get your name in the paper. There was something about it that wasn't about basketball, but it was about the performance of it. It was about, how do I serve my team? It was about community, but the sport itself, I think they really just let me on the team because I've been this height since like 5th grade. So, but yeah, It's just always been a part of who I am.
That is so beautiful. So I think we're all out of time, but before we end, we have to do our thank you bomb. Well, what do you want to do?
I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, well, we're all about to say thank you, but you wanted to give a personal, private thank.
No,
This is not our show, okay? This is Sejani's show.
No. I was gonna say we should all say thank you, but you already were planning to do that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna count to 3, and we're gonna unmute our mics, and we're gonna thank you, Bomb Karen. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you
much, Karen.
Karen.
You're
Amazing.
wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're incredible.
Thank you so much.
Really wonderful
You're
night.
so incredible.
Thank you.
I learned so much.
Can I just
Thank
Can
you
I
so
just come back for the thank you bomb? Like, that's amazing. I love it. And thank you all. Thank you all so much for your presence and for your energy and for sharing and for being open and for being in community with me tonight and let me in. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for being here. So I'm going to stop the recording now. I'm going to stay for a couple of more minutes, but you have been absolutely incredible. And I can't thank you enough. I'm